culture is arguably the fastest way to propagate plants. And it's ideal if you have, say, some super clone beautiful plant that you want to propagate and have exact replicas of. For example, you have a plant that you grow from seed, and one of them turns out to be much more beautiful than the rest of them. You select that plant out, and you can propagate it this way and make thousands and thousands of clones of it, and then call it something like Agave Cactus Quest, and then you know everybody wants that exact agave. So it's a way of sort of getting, you know, well, this will cheapen it a little bit, but it's sort of like a Big Mac. You know what it's going to be every time you get it. When you buy the plant, you know exactly what it's going to look like.
So I like to think of it more in terms of like it's like where botany and horticulture and science fiction meet. Right. What is it sitting in?
Well, it's sitting in a sort of a gel that's comprised of sugars and growth hormones and auxins and all sorts of stuff that can help it grow and survive and replicate. So it's pretty fascinating. You can take a plant that's about the size of your fist, an agave about the size of your fist, and maybe I'll show you this later on in an actual plant. But you'll cut off the leaves where they start growing, and you'll cut off the roots where they start growing, and you're left with this sort of nub of a plant, right? And then you can take that plant and you can spin it in a diluted bleach. Sometimes as high as 40%. Spin that plant in that high bleach, and then stick it in this gel under grow lights, and it doesn't hesitate. It starts growing almost immediately.
With cactus, you have, you know, a very easily identifiable growing meristem right at the center of the stem of the plant, right? So to tissue culture a cactus, do you need an entire cactus, or you just need a really small amount of the growing meristem tissue, or what exactly is?
Well, I haven't actually done cactus, but I would imagine you would just need a small part of that growing meristem, and wherever the roots would grow from, and wherever the leaves would start from. Okay, just that nucleus of the plant, essentially.
So, like, okay, we're looking right here. This particular guy, that little piece. So that's all the more of a core of the plant that you need to.
Yes, but that's awfully small. So that what happened here was they had already been growing. Usually when they go in, you know, you don't want to go much smaller than that. Okay. But that's about the small size. And the one you were just filming is one that's already started to divide.
Gotcha.
And so what will happen, especially with an agave is a little slower to multiply. So what they'll do is they'll start to just grow back normally. And you just continuously cut it each month, and eventually it stresses the plant so hard that it starts putting out babies at every little leaf axil.
So are you cutting that plant, you're taking it out of here, cutting it and putting it back into the solution, or you're talking prior to?
You cut it once, you put it in, you make sure it goes in clean, and then about once a month you continuously cut it until it starts pushing out those babies around every little leaf axil.
Interesting.
And now you've got your clone, and now you've got a clump of plants. And then you can cut that one in half or in quarter, and each one of those goes in their own jars, and those keep multiplying and multiplying, and you just keep cutting those.
Gotcha.
And that's how you do it.
So that's where then you end up with something like, you have, now, is this one, for instance, you would then chop that back at some point?
Well, yeah, yes, you would.
Okay. And then so once you get a plant where you've chopped it down and you've chopped it down and you've chopped it down, I mean, it's almost like, it's basically like light speed cutting propagation.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. So from there, once you've got them to where they begin to...
Once you have enough, like let's say, like, because I'm not a huge operation, and I'm also not looking to grow thousands and thousands and thousands of one type of plant, like an agave blue glow or an agave perii truncata Huntington clone, right? They're everywhere. I'm not looking to do that. Everything I'm growing in here is in-house stuff I made, only available here, and only probably gonna make several hundred of each.
Gotcha.
You know, at a time, because that's all I can really do, and that's all I'm really interested in making.
To jump back to that first piece that you showed me where you're gonna be chopping it down, right? Like something like that.
Yeah.
ultimately, from a piece like that, how many plants, you can get several hundred plants from a piece?
Thousands.
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 And at what point with all of those plants does it begin to drift?
Well, that takes a while.
Okay.
That can take several years usually.
Wow.
So yeah, and really the key to avoid drift, even though I've seen some drift plants actually pretty cool, to avoid drift is to reinitiate the same plant and start over.
Interesting. To me, that is absolutely fascinating to think that from that tiny little piece of the growing portion of a plant, of an agave, that you could make thousands of identical replicas. Like, it's all, that genetic code is all in that tiny little piece of that plant. It is just so incredible.
Yeah, so look at this one. This was sort of what I was explaining, is each nub will then start to multiply and make heads of many different plants. And then these ones, there's 3 clumps in there.
And each one of those little 2-leaf, that's a plant.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And then you can cut these or quarter them or whatever and put each one of those in their own bottle and they'll make this. And then it goes faster and faster. Agaves can be a little slow to start, but once it gets going after several months, I mean, you're golden.
And so then here, looking at a pot like this, can I pick this up?
Yeah.
So looking at something like this then, where you've got the roots in there.
Right.
This would be something that is then...
That's ready to come out.
Ready to come out.
That's ready to come out, yeah.
So when you're taking something like this out of a, super high potent mixture, and then you're taking it and you're putting it directly into, do you have a special soil mix that you use when you transfer things out of the lab?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do. And in this, as long as the nights are warm, you can transfer immediately into that soil mix into the greenhouse. No problem, a non-heated greenhouse.
Gotcha.
But come colder temperatures, less light times a year, they'll often need a warmer greenhouse.
Or do you tend to have some die-off?
Thus far, with everything I've grown in here, I haven't had any hesitation. Everything is transferred from here to the greenhouse, didn't miss a beat.
And so this could actually be something, there's somebody I saw on Instagram that is doing tissue culture with, I think they're doing it at home, but they're doing it with cactus and stuff.
Yeah.
So this is actually something where I think if somebody was able to, for instance, if you had some particularly rare species of cactus and you were able to you could really put it into tissue culture at home and make thousands of them. Especially with something that's really hard to grow or super endangered, or you only have one. Really, if you have a clump, okay, so I had an astrophytum, it's Monstrose astrophytum, super kabuto star shape that has crested offsets. So it's just this totally weird plant. Part of it started to rot, and so I've got all these pieces of it. I grafted a few, and I'm trying to root a few, but it would be really cool to tissue culture that.
Yeah.
Because it's a strange astrophytum.
And you could do this at home. You could do it in an aquarium at your house. There's people who do it. There's stuff out there where you can even buy some of these ready-made gels and do it yourself. But it's not easy, and it takes a lot of close attention. And, well, I shouldn't say it's not easy. It's probably about as complicated as baking a cake, but you just have to be very careful at each step of the way to keep everything clean, because if you get any kind of mold or bacteria in here, they can spread like a wildfire and take out a lot of your plants.
Yeah.
So that's really the key, is the cleanliness.
And so you have, the lab is obviously sealed, it's clean. Do you have special filters for the
HEPA filter?
Okay. And then you said it's climate controlled in here.
They do perfectly fine around 72 year-round temperature. So this would be the laminar flow hood. When working in here, it keeps everything in here sterile. So,
awesome.
Yeah, if you were to do this at home, you need a very, very sterile place to be able to do it. And this is a way to keep things clean. And then behind you, I have my autoclave. And this is where we put all the tools in it, all the media in here before. Anything we put in here will be sterile when it comes out. You could put a dog turd in there and it would be sterile when it came out. So this is sort of immediate when they come out. These have been out, well, they've been out almost 2 months.
And so, okay, so like you got, you know, a flat like this. How many plugs is this?
50.
So how is that coming out of like 1 jar, 2 jars?
Well, it depends. They're not all equal. So, but this is probably going to be about 2 to 2.5 jars. So that's like that's the Pototorum spawn. These are all TC.
That's awesome.
Yeah, not a pretty plant. These are all like that.
And in terms
I
of
had
like
tons of them, but you know, because I don't make that many, and because there's such a big pull from different areas of the world, they just sell as soon as they're big enough to sell.
So, and with plants like that, in terms of putting them into like a landscape or the tissue culture plants, they fare just as well as.
Just as strong.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, look at these are out of tissue. Don't those look just as beautiful as any of the other seed-grown plants in here?
Yeah. Well, I recently at Inner-City, I went to Inner-City and I bought 2 plants, and the 2 plants I bought a Pachypodium namaquanum, and then I bought a tissue culture aloe pearsoni.
These are tissue culture vetifolia that came out of the lab. I haven't been able to keep any of those. They all sell right away, so as soon as they're big enough.
Well, yeah, a nice big variegated vetifolia.
Yeah. This isn't one you would tissue culture because this is just an example.
Not something you necessarily want to clone.
Right. But you know, it's kind of interesting. You grow so many of these plants from seed, and so many of them are beautiful. So you pick that one that is that ultimate sort of the best looking of the best.
Yeah.
And that's the one you pick. So it wouldn't look like this. But for example of how I would prepare a plant to go into the lab, prior to going into the lab, I would cut a lot of this stuff away. And it's not a bad practice to even grow stuff in pumice first, because you have a lot less soil on it, and therefore a lot less different types of kind of ways that you could get your plant dirty once it's in the lab.
Right.
So I stripped down many layers.
So it's kind of like just you're peeling the artichoke.
That's right. We don't need all these roots. So you want it really nice and even. You don't want little open areas where pieces of dirt can hide. Maybe even cut that a little more. And at this point, I could bring it. I'd probably, I mean, I'd rinse it off under water to clean any extra dirt off it. But now we have the area where the roots can start and the area where the leaves can start. I went a little heavy on the root side. Normally you want it about 3 to 1, but I would cut that back even a little bit further. And so out of all these little places, you'll start to get your new little buds, and it'll eventually form this clump of new plants that then, you know, you can cut in half. And like I said before, each go in their own jar, and they make bigger clumps, and you cut those in bigger clumps, and on, you're in business.
This is where we're going to end the video right here. Thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate it. Like, subscribe, share it, all that good stuff. And until the next time, peace.